In terms of the ElectroState energy security course, can you give us a little bit of a background to people who are interested in signing up? What are you going to be covering, and what is included within the title of energy security and the ElectroState?
So there's been a lot around electrostate recently focused on China. Obviously, China is, a lot of people describe China as the first electrostate. They've had a long-term strategy that they've developed and built over the last, well, more than a decade, couple of decades probably, where they've kind of working towards that goal, which is obviously around reducing dependency on fossil fuels in particular. I would argue more so than being kind of clean and green. So the idea on the theme of energy security around the electrostate is I'm hoping to really delve into the question of, is that something that other countries can replicate as well? So a lot of people are kind of looking at China, but can other countries follow the same kind of pathway, and not necessarily to becoming a full electrified state, but also how different countries might have different limits on how far along the electrification path they can have. But in the context very much of, does this help them become more secure as a state? Particularly, obviously, the world you can sort of broadly divide in the 20th century into countries who exported fossil fuels and made lots of money doing so, and other countries which were dependent on those imports of fossil fuels to run a reasonable economy. One of the whole aspects of the electrostate is it potentially gives countries a way to kind of break out of that dependency from imported fuels, particularly because the kind of primary resources for electricity we're looking at, it kind of ties in with clean, but it's not, you don't have to do it because it's clean, but sun, wind, geothermal, hydro, whatever countries have at their disposal are not assets that somebody else can control. So the question is, well, can countries make more use of their domestic assets, their domestic resources, to become more electrified as a result, and hence reduce that dependency? It may not remove entire dependency on fossil fuels, but how far can countries go? And so to do that, we'll be looking at some of the things that need to be done, some of the things that are happening. We'll be looking at kind of what resources countries might need in terms of physical resources, minerals, metals, land on which they can kind of build renewable power, for example, or they can where they can mine the things they need to mine. We'll also be looking at some of the kind of policy aspects required to drive this forward. Some of the supply chain, are they just transferring dependency, for example, on importing oil to importing solar panels from China or batteries from China, or can they develop supply chains to build those things themselves? Is that economic to do so? So quite a lot around those kind of aspects. Other kind of topics that we'll cover will be, not just thinking about security as a kind of external factor, if you like, but also security of the system. Can you build an electrified system which is resilient, works when the wind isn't blowing or the sun isn't shining? That classic question: what are the actual technologies and frameworks and approaches that have to be taken to do that? Obviously, specific aspects of electrification feed in, like electric vehicles. What's the impact they will have on the grid? How's that changing demand patterns? And then a kind of couple of final ones, I guess. I think there's a lot, and the other kind of change that's been happening almost, is it part of the electrostate or parallel to it, is the idea of more kind of distributed energy. People use this term Internet of Energy. I think that's also central to the whole electrostate idea, and a lot of that is around kind of what happens at the grid edge, smart demand, smart energy management, those kind of things. So those are kind of the main themes, and then, as I say, what we'll look at is examples of kind of what specific countries are doing, how countries that aren't China are kind of heading along that pathway, how successful they can and can't be, what sort of things they have to do to get there. And obviously, in the context of people want to make money out of this, what does that mean for kind of business opportunities and product sales and those kind of things? that's where we're aiming all this at.
Excellent. Well, it's going to be a fascinating ride, fascinating course. Looking forward to the service. Looking forward to the first few editions. So thanks a lot, Dr. John, and we look forward to the new course.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Cheers.